I finished watching Daniel Morad's video, which I will link below, on setting up your sim rig. And basically, it's like the geometry of what your seat angle should be at, and your pedal angles, and wheel angle, all those kinds of things. So I'm going to try to apply that to this Playseat Trophy, which might be a little bit of a challenge because of how it is. There's only so much you can change on it, but I'm gonna at least kind of double check some of my angles and measurements, because I do end up having some issues, mostly with my knees, and that might be maybe pedal angle or distance. I'm not sure. So I'm going to play around with it, but what I need to start with off camera, because I need to use this phone that I'm using right now, and I'm going to use the measure app. There's a level in there, and I'm going to start with just checking some of the angles on this rig, and we'll go from there. Welcome back. Well, I guess you guys didn't go anywhere. I did. I learned a few things. So I did pull some measurements here, and I'll show you my crude drawing here in a second. My seat geometry actually seemed pretty good. And then I noticed watching Morad's video, his pedal tray, or I guess that's what you call this piece, where there's supposed to be like this heel stop. His heel stops back about here, and it's also level, and it's hard to get the angle here, but mine is on quite a steep angle here. I took it apart to see if I could deal with just that angle, because my concern is if I level out to level this, I need to level everything, and that's going to push the angle of these pedals even farther away, and I'm not sure that's what I want. So next thing is I need to measure the angle of my legs, which his recommendation is 130 degrees. So we'll do that next, and then hopefully that will help me determine the placement of this whole pedal tray, which on the Playseat Trophy, I can undo that, and I've got a little bit of a few slots to play with. Slots on the inside, you can see past there, and then you just have some different locations to put the fasteners. So let's get that leg angle first, and we'll go from there. Welcome to my artistic abilities. So here's what I've got. So the seat back and really the seat bottom at 30 degrees. Then there's like a little bit of an angle here that's about 45. And then toward the top at 64. And that's pretty much in line with what he was recommending. Then I measured this angle of my thigh, 14 degrees. Shin is 38 degrees. You add 14 and 38, subtract from 180, and you get 128. He's recommending 130. That is measured at full extension. So all of that is checking out, but back over at the rig, kind of my only real concern, especially now that I'm noticing what an angle the heel stop is on and how close it is to the pedal, is when I'm accelerating, when I'm not thinking about it, I tend to do this, and then I get some leg pain. So maybe it's just a matter of retraining my brain. I do feel like that if that angle was up a little bit of where the foot stop is, the heel stop, and was down here, I could kind of pivot on it more. So it might, I'm not sure how to change that angle, because I really don't want to move this whole thing forward like that, because then it messes with the pedal angle, which I think is already shallower than what he was recommending. But I'm going to double check the math on that, and we'll come back. But I guess so far I'm not too far off with his recommendations, so we'll keep going. All right, I checked the math, and it's hard maybe to see the angle here, but I'm at 8 degrees pointing that direction. And what Morad is recommending basically is a reverse of that at about 12 degrees. So what he is saying is that where that pivot point is on the bottom here, that the pedal should be closer to the driver than the pivot point so that you're not pressing over the pivot point as much. There's no way I can do that really without an extreme angle to this pedal tray. I'm not going to do that. So I think what I'm going to do is probably live with this for a while and try to pay closer attention to what I'm doing, because I went through this with my braking where I was way over pressurizing, pressing way too hard for brakes, and I actually destroyed some of those elastomers from way too much pressure. And I think maybe I've got a similar thing. The other thing that would happen is that joint right there, that slip joint, is I would press so hard that it would extend just that side. This side would stay the same. So over a couple months or at least weeks of retraining myself, changing the spring tension, I did add that 3D printer spring instead. And so this does press pretty easy. It's kind of tough from this angle with a hand, but it's got some throw there and it's not super hard. So mostly I fixed that with retraining my brain on how to brake. And I'm thinking I might have to do something similar here with this. I might try making another adjustment overall to the pedal tray, but since I've got my leg angle feels pretty good, and I have messed with this before and ended up making it feel worse even after a couple of weeks of leaving it that way. So I think I'm just going to live with that for now. Maybe experiment a little bit, but not sure. So next we're going to go on to where my arms are hitting for the geometry for the steering wheel. So we'll try that next. Okay, for distance, what he shows in his video, if I haven't said this before, please go watch his video. He covers this better. I really trying to apply his principles to this rig specifically because it's not super adjustable. And what he said is basically you put your arms and you get your shoulders back and then put your arms over here and it should hit at about your wrist. And in his video, it's about where mine are hitting. So I think I've got the distance pretty good there. I feel like it's actually a little closer to my wrist, where his was hitting is probably a little bit closer. So if I could easily adjust this and slide it back and forth, I probably would come another inch maybe closer to my body. But because Playseat Trophy, that's not super easy. I would have to, I could drill new holes and shift this whole thing an inch, but at this time, it's not worth the trouble. I think I'm in the ballpark close enough, and I haven't really noticed that with like shoulder and neck pain or overdoing that. I do sometimes do that, lean, unnecessary lean that I'm sure a lot of us have played around with. But at some point, I plan to tear this whole rig apart and redo cabling, mostly because I've added a bunch of mods after the fact. When I first did this, drilled the hole and ran all of my cables. All my cables are running through the frame of the Playseat Trophy, so you don't really see a whole lot exposed. But since the first time I did that, and I do have a video on the channel showing that, I have added multiple mods. So I've shoved way more cables through here and had to do some stuff where there are a few things that are exposed and kind of hanging out. So at some point I'll do that. Whenever that happens, I will probably drill some new holes, and maybe what I'll do is drill a series of holes to give myself some options and a little bit of adjustability. But like I said, I think I'm in the ballpark. The one thing that I did early on is I flipped this plate around. The wheelbase plate is able to go 180 degrees, and that let me move it away a little bit. Otherwise, I felt like I was like here. It was just too close. So this doesn't feel bad. So I think we're going to live with the distance, and then I'm going to check we'll check the steering wheel angle next. What he's recommending, just going back to this distance, is that we're at a 90-degree angle on the arm. I'm probably extend it a little bit. So 90 degrees is probably about here. So that inch and a half would probably get me there. But I think, like I said, we're close enough, and for what this rig is, I'm going to live with it. Height wise, I'm going to jump to first. He was mentioning top of your hand in line with the shoulders, and I'll go back and look at this video. I feel like I might be slightly high, but again, considering what we have, I think that's it's close enough. The angle then, this angle, basically your steering shaft angle, he's at 14 degrees. I haven't measured this yet, and I will, but I don't think I'm going to get 14 degrees. I am going to go a little shallow, and I'm going to live with that for a couple of reasons. The first is, this being the Playseat Trophy, if I adjust this angle and go like that, it is going to push this up too high, and I'm going to be up like this. So I don't want that. So I feel like I'm probably already on the high side anyway, and that I'd want to be down a little bit to get even with my shoulders. The other reason is I run this dedicated display unit, and if I mess that angle, if I keep going up with this, I am going to lose visibility with that. And if I'm, start to do that, something like that. So I think I could probably go maybe another degree or two. This might be loose enough to even do it. Let's see. I know, I'll just grab the wheel and crank as hard as I can. No, I'll have to either loosen or get in a better position. But this being the Playseat Trophy, that's one of the things that I fully admit is you're going to compromise on adjustability. But if you need the portability, like I have now, I can slide this thing around the living room, get it out of the way, push it to another room if I need to pretty easily. Most, I think, aluminum profile rigs, you're not going to get away with that. But I guess all of that to say, I think I've got this thing set up pretty well, with maybe a tweak to the pedal tray and angles and distance there. I don't know. I have to think about that, whether I want to mess with that or if I just want to spend maybe the next week kind of consciously being aware of lifting that heel and kind of, doing this thing and pressing way too hard when I really don't have to. I can get full acceleration. I am right now. It doesn't feel strained. It's just, you're racing, adrenaline's going, and you somehow think that 50 extra pounds of pressure on that gas pedal is going to make you go faster. It turns out that doesn't really work. So there you go. Anyway, that is probably going to wrap it up here for just really, I guess, what's more of an overview and review of how my rig is set up and the angles. And again, I encourage you to go watch that Daniel Morad video. It's very thorough, and if you've got a different kind of rig, it might prove to be a little bit more useful to you. But for me, in this Playseat Trophy, at the very least, it makes me feel a little more confident that I'm not completely out of whack with my angles and measurements, and I just sort of intuitively put it how it is, and also understanding there are some compromises here that I'm really not going to get away with. One other idea, if you're using the Playseat Trophy, let me pop out here, is I have these isolators on the bottom, which are very difficult to see. They're just some kind of like that thick yoga mat material. And then I've got a chair glider that goes through them. It's all zip tied on there. So this does give me a little more height. When I first got this rig, I actually had a spacer or an extender that lifted up the rear of the Playseat Trophy, and that helped give me a little bit of a different angle, I guess. I don't know if it's better or not, but it did something like this. So it doesn't change, well, it does change this angle slightly, and then you can adjust the seat to bring the angle back a little bit more. And it's one option. Don't know if that's a great one, but in case that sparks an idea, there you go. So hopefully this is helpful and gives you some information, but check out that Daniel Morad video, and maybe it'll, lessen your knee pain and your back pain, especially if you're an old guy like me. Thanks for watching, guys.